The night air pressed heavy against my chest as lightning forked across the sky, illuminating rows of rusted metal doors in the abandoned warehouse. Rain pounded the corrugated roof, drowning out the distant hum of the city. My hands shook around the cold handle of the fourth door down. Phoenix was frantic behind me, her paws scrabbling at my back, growling low enough to rattle her ribs. She'd never been this worked up before. I didn't need to look back to know her eyes were wide with that familiar spark of urgency. The scar along her flank, jagged and pale against her black coat, twitched as if electrified. Her muzzle was flecked with foam, nostrils flaring. Every hair on her neck stood on end. Behind this door, she'd smelled something no human could see. Fear. And I knew it wasn't her own. With one deep breath, I yanked the door open. It screamed on its hinge, and a blast of stale air hit us, fog rolling in from the broken windows, swirls of dust motes in the beam of my flashlight. Phoenix darted inside, nose to the ground, tail high like a battle banner. I followed, boots thudding on oil-streaked concrete. We spun into a room of overturned crates and shattered glass. The only exit was the way we came in, but from somewhere down the far wall came a muffled whimper. My heart seized. "Phoenix," I whispered, voice raw as gravel. "Show me." She bounded ahead, body low, hackles up, nose locked on a spot beneath a smashed pallet. I knelt beside her, shining my light into the gloom. There, half hidden by splintered wood, I saw slender fingers trembling around a dog leash. The leash snapped in two, frayed at the end. My breath caught. This was no ordinary find. Before I could reach, Phoenix lunged, jaws parting in a protective snarl. I froze, heart pounding. She pivoted, hackles rising even higher, and stood guard over the figure behind the pallet. The boy, 12, maybe 13, had dark circles under his eyes, cheeks streaked with dirt. He pressed his back against the wall, clutching the broken leash like it was a lifeline. I forced myself forward, hands open to show no harm. "Hey," my voice caught. "It's okay. I'm here to help." Phoenix gave a single low woof and settled beside me, ears pricked. She trusted me enough to step aside. I reached out, gently pulling away a jagged plank. Splinters raked my palm, but I didn't flinch. The boy flinched more. His eyes were wide with panic, voice trembling as he spoke. "They said I'd be safe, but they lied." My pulse throbbed in my temples. "Who said that? Who did this?" He swallowed hard, gaze flicking to Phoenix. "The men in black. They have cages and they take dogs, then kids." His words tumbled out. "They forced us to watch. We couldn't tell anyone. If we ran," he gasped, tears slipping down. "If we ran, they'd hurt her." I swallowed around the lump in my throat. "Her?" He nodded, voice a whisper. "My sister. They took her first." In that moment, the thunder cracked overhead, the warehouse shuddering as if in agony. Phoenix pressed against me, tail rigid. The deserted building felt too small, walls closing in. My breath was ragged, thoughts spiraled. Flashbacks surged. The night I'd found Phoenix huddled in a storm drain, broken and bleeding, rescued from that same ring of traffickers. The fear in her eyes matched this boy's. She'd carried her trauma in that crippled leg, but she'd never stopped trusting me. And now she'd led me back into the storm to save another. I crouched beside the boy, pressing a hand to his shoulder. He jerked but didn't pull away. "You're safe now," I whispered. "I promise you'll get help." He exhaled, a shuddering breath that sounded too big for his small frame. "They'll come back." I looked at Phoenix. Her teeth were bared in a silent snarl. "Not on my watch." Rising, I tugged the boy to his feet. His legs wobbled, but Phoenix steadied him, leaning her weight against his hip. The bond between them was instant, an unspoken pledge that we were in this together. Behind us, the warehouse door swung open, rain pouring in like a flood. Flashlight beams danced across the gloom. Two figures in black tactical gear, rifles slung, boots splashing in puddles. My blood turned to ice. Phoenix growled, hackles bristling. The boy froze, terror widening his eyes. I squared my shoulders, pulling the flashlight into my free hand like a makeshift shield. "Stay behind me," I hissed to the boy. "Keep moving." I took a step forward, voice as steady as I could muster. "This child is under my protection. Let him go, or we will call the police." The nearest man tilted his head, rain dripping off his helmet. "The buyer's on his way. We don't have time for—" His voice trailed off as Phoenix lunged, teeth bared, knocking him back. I seized the moment. "Go!" I shoved the boy toward the door. He stumbled past me, Phoenix at his side. The second man raised his weapon, but she snapped at his ankles, sending him into a crouch. I grabbed the boy's hand, hauling him into the downpour. We sprinted across the muddy yard, gravel crunching underfoot. Phoenix led the way, ears back, muzzle dripping water. Behind us, shouts and gunfire cracked, echoing through the night. I didn't look back. The street was deserted. Streetlights flickered, casting fractured shadows on wet asphalt. I found the boy's sister in the back seat of my car, trembling under a wool blanket. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed red. "Tess," the boy gasped, "I'm so sorry." She reached for him, tears breaking free. Through the car window, I saw Phoenix stand guard over the man in black, who'd fallen to his knees, bleeding. His partner waved a hand above his helmet, his signal for retreat. They melted into the darkness like ghosts. My chest heaved. "He's gone," I rasped. Tess wrapped the blanket around her brother's shoulders, shoulders shaking with sobs. I sank behind the wheel, hands slick on the steering wheel. Phoenix jumped into the back seat, nose pressed against Tess's knee. She licked the girl's hand, offering a small, wet comfort. Tess looked up at me, her eyes hard with fear and relief. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for saving us." I nodded, unable to meet her gaze. My mind raced with questions. How many children? How many dogs? The ring I'd thought dismantled after Phoenix's rescue was alive again, darker than ever. Children and animals trafficked, forced into blood money. I started the engine, defying the downpour. "We need to get you both safe," I said, voice low. "And then we take this all the way to the top." Tess's brother sniffed, clutching Phoenix's leash. "What about you?" he asked. I glanced at Phoenix, her head resting on the boy's shoulder, eyes closed. She'd given everything to protect him, and I would give everything to protect them, just as she had given everything to protect me. Ahead, the warehouse loomed in my rearview mirror, lightning blazing its silhouette. I inhaled the scent of rain and fear, combining into something alive, something roaring beneath my ribs. "I'll be right behind you," I promised. "We're just getting started." Phoenix's soft whine drifted through the car's interior. The siblings held each other, hearts pounding in unison. And as we pulled away, heading toward the flashing lights of a waiting squad car, I realized the thunder wasn't over. It was just the beginning of the storm we'd be riding into. The world had hidden its darkest corners, but tonight we'd torn back the veil. And with Phoenix by my side, I knew we would not stop until every cage was empty and every child and dog was safe. My throat tightened. I tightened my grip on the wheel and made a silent vow. However long this night lasted, we would prevail. Because no matter how deep the shadows stretched, as long as loyalty guided us, hope would burn bright. And somewhere, in the heart of that thunder, a spark of justice was waiting to ignite. I can still taste the rain on my tongue. Dawn broke in gunmetal strips across the shattered warehouse windows, but I'd already driven half the night to reach the precinct. The siblings, Tess and her brother, Micah, sat side by side in the back seat, cradling Phoenix's blanket like a lifeline. I watched them through the rearview mirror, bone-deep exhaustion pooling in my chest, but I couldn't stop now. At the station, fluorescent lights hummed as officers bustled through the lobby. Detective Ruiz met us at the intake desk, eyes widening when she saw the kids and the dog. "You did good," she said, her voice low. She waved me forward, motioning toward a quiet interview room. Tess leaned forward, voice soft as moss. "Thank you," she whispered again, pressing her face into Phoenix's coarse fur. I knelt beside them. "You're safe," I vowed. "I'm going to make sure they can't hurt another soul." Phoenix nudged Micah's hand. You could almost see her promise in that gentle push. The detectives took statements, asked details, names, dates, locations. Tess and Micah repeated the same terror-choked story. Men in black grabbing them from a foster home, herding dogs and children into crates, shipping them off in unmarked vans. A network fueled by pay-per-view fights, online auctions, twisted bets, profitable horror traded like livestock. My stomach twisted. I'd thought the worst I'd face were stolen dogs for underground fights. But this looped children into the same nightmare. Phoenix rested her head on my knee. Memories of her own rescue flickered in my mind. Me finding her tangled in wire, her eyes pleading. She'd trusted me then. Now she trusted me again. With these two, I had to repay that debt 1,000 times over. Detective Ruiz stepped out and returned with a file, surveillance footage from the warehouse lot. We crowded around the screen, grainy images of vans rolling in, handlers dragging crates, faces blurred, logos too faint. But one shot lingered, a truck parked beside a marked utility van, the same symbol stitched on firefighters' jackets in my town, a stylized phoenix rising through flames. My breath caught. The fire department. It couldn't be. Ruiz frowned. That emblem is registered to a private logging company, Phoenix Forestry. They operate in rural counties, but that logo, it's too close. She paused, leaning in. We'll subpoena their records. In the meantime, I want you to stick with the kids. Phoenix, too. I nodded, thumb brushing the scruff behind Phoenix's whisper-soft ears. I'll keep them safe. Late afternoon, I drove Tess and Micah to a safe house, an unassuming bungalow with freshly painted siding and a backyard fence tall enough to keep prying eyes out. A social worker, Jenna, greeted us with blankets and juice boxes. Tess clutched her sister's hand, eyes wary of every shadow. Micah's gaze kept flicking to the open door, expecting danger. Phoenix settled at the threshold. Jenna knelt and stroked her muzzle. What a gentle soul, Jenna whispered, voice thick. Phoenix leaned into her touch, trusting again. When Jenna guided the kids inside, I lingered in the hallway. Parts of me ached with every child's sob that drifted through the walls. I bumped fists with Phoenix. We'll break this wide open, I promised. The sun dipped below rooftops, and I returned home alone. The house felt hollow without Toby's spirit, without the quiet companionship that once guided me through grief. On the kitchen counter lay Tess and Micah's drawings, a family reunited under golden sunshine, dogs and children free. I poured coffee, black and strong, and replayed the surveillance snippet in my mind. That Phoenix emblem burned into my thoughts. I had to follow that trail. An hour later, I was in my car again, headlights slicing through dusk as I headed north to the logging roads where Phoenix Forestry trucks ventured. My gut twisted with each mile. The network ran deeper than I feared. I parked at the edge of a gravel road that wound into dense pines. The air smelled of damp earth and resin. Phoenix lay beside me, muzzle on my boot, eyes gleaming like lanterns. I patted her flank. Time to meet old friends. We moved on foot, following tire tracks that crisscrossed mud. I kept to the shadows, flashlight in one hand, phone in the other. Phoenix paused at intervals, nose twitching, guiding me toward a clearing dotted with shipping containers. One container door was ajar, revealing the silhouette of a child's toy and frayed rope. My pulse thundered. Then I heard voices, men laughing, clinking bottles. I slipped behind a boulder and peeked around the edge. Two uniformed men in Phoenix Forestry jackets smoked cigarettes by a container. Between them, a handler with a clipboard barked orders at a quivering Labrador strapped to a post, beside a small metal crate that shook with muffled cries. Phoenix growled low, hiding behind me. I steadied my camera app and snapped photos. The fire in me ignited. These were the same traffickers, using the logging front to hide monstrous crimes. Footsteps crunched behind us. A third man stepped into the clearing, silhouetted by the fading light. He was taller, broader, his helmet shaped like a medic's, with the Phoenix crest stamped above the visor. He slipped a glove on, glanced at the container door, and motioned impatiently. The men laughed and climbed into a waiting truck. As they drove out, Phoenix crept forward, sniffing at the wrecked container. I eased the door wider and saw nearly a dozen children's backpacks, torn blankets, leashes, and harnesses. My stomach churned. I lifted a child's rain boot and ran my fingers over mud, tiny footprints. I backed away, slipping in the wet pine needles, heart pounding so loud I was sure it would give me away. Phoenix stayed her ground, chest heaving with low whines. She nudged my hand. I snapped one last photo of the crate before we vanished into the woods, the truck's taillights blinking in the distance. Back at the safe house, I shared the photos with Detective Ruiz. Her eyes darkened as she scrolled. "They're hiding children here," I said, voice hollow. "And your guys in black weren't subcontractors. They're Phoenix Forestry employees." Ruiz let out a long breath. "We'll raid this site at first light," she said, "and we'll get warrants to search all their affiliated properties. But this goes beyond local trafficking. Someone in high places has to be involved." I rubbed my temples. "Do what you need to do, but keep Tess and Micah out of it. If Phoenix's instincts are right, they'll come for them again." She nodded. "We'll protect the kids. You take care of that dog." That night, I sat on my porch with Phoenix. The moon was thin, a silver thread in indigo sky. I poured her water into a bowl. She drank in long, grateful licks. Then she nudged my side, pawing at my knee. I rubbed her ears and felt a knot of dread uncoil when I noticed her breathing falter. She'd sheltered so many, Tess, Micah, me, but now it was my turn to protect her. I led her inside, settled her blankets by the fire. The warmth glowed against her black coat, setting it aflame. I sat beside her, whispering promises of tomorrow, of justice, of peace. But sleep eluded me. At dawn, the operation moved fast. SWAT teams approached the logging site from both ends. Officers flanked with battering rams and rifles. I watched from the command vehicle as they stormed the clearing. Cries of surprise, the blur of uniforms, and then the sight that twisted my heart. Cages opened, children stumbling into arms, dogs leaping to freedom. Phoenix sat by my side, ears pricked. As the first Labrador bounded out, it turned, tongue lolling, and bolted toward her. The dog skidded to a halt, nose to Phoenix's flank, eyes bright with recognition and hope. Phoenix lowered her head, tail sweeping the mud in the slow arcs. That moment was more powerful than any raid. Two souls broken by trauma, finding kinship in the wreckage. Detective Ruiz approached, breathless. "We got at least 20 kids, a dozen dogs. We're securing evidence, but we found shipping manifests, routes leading back to shelters, foster homes, even private clinics. They used every charity name under the sun to launder these horrors." I swallowed, feeling betrayal like a weight in my chest. "We need to expose every branch," I said. "Publish the names, show the world." She placed a hand on my shoulder. "This story will make headlines. They'll be scrambling, but these people will fight back. They're ruthless." Phoenix whined softly and pressed against me. I knelt and ran my hand down her flank. Her scar was a faded memory now, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. She'd shown me where to look, guided me through darkness, and she'd never wavered. That afternoon, the press swarmed the station. I gave a statement, my voice steady, eyes locked on the cameras. Tess and Micah watched from behind a shield of detectives, clinging to each other. Phoenix lay at my feet, alert but calm. I told the story, how a dog saved a boy, how they led me to a conspiracy woven into the fabric of trusted institutions. Reporters scribbled, cameras flashed, but I spoke only the truth. As the press conference ended, a reporter asked, "What will you do next?" I met the lens. "Keep hunting, because as long as one child or one animal remains caged, we haven't done our job." My words echoed across the courtyard. When the crowds dispersed, Tess and Micah ran up. Tess threw her arms around me. "Thank you," she breathed. Micah hugged Phoenix, tears on his cheeks. The bond between the three of them glowed like a living ember. In that moment, I saw something I hadn't felt since I rescued Phoenix. The fierce, unbreakable hope that comes when love refuses to die. Later, I sat alone on the curb, Phoenix curled at my side. The sun set gold over the station, painting hope into the cracks of an ugly truth. My phone buzzed with messages, whistleblowers promising more evidence, detectives needing leads, social workers tracking foster cases. The storm wasn't over. It was gathering force. Phoenix lifted her head and licked my hand. I traced her scar with my thumb. "We're in this together," I whispered. She wagged her tail once, a slow, deliberate beat. I stood, brushing grit from my jeans. The night still held shadows, but the air tasted of rain and revelation. I locked eyes with Phoenix. "Let's go find the next hiding place," I said. She sprang to her feet, nose pointed forward. Tess and Micah appeared at the fence, waved with bright, hopeful faces. I nodded at them. "Stay safe," I told them. "I'll be back soon." Tess's voice carried through the dusk. "We'll be waiting." "We believe in you." I glanced at Phoenix. "We've got a team," I said. We walked toward my car, a mismatched pack of one determined man, one battle-scarred dog, and two brave kids whose trust would fuel every step ahead. The world had revealed its darkest corners, but we'd brought lanterns of truth, and we weren't done yet. If you believe in fighting darkness with every ounce of your heart, hit subscribe and join us on this journey. Every click helps shine a light where it belongs. I felt the chill before I saw the fog roll in. Pale tendrils slipping between lampposts on the Riverwalk, winding through empty benches where Phoenix and I used to watch sunset glow on the water. My boots echoed against wet stone as I followed the tip-off. An anonymous text pointing to a gala tonight at the Riverview Pavilion, sponsored by Heartland Rescue, one of the charities listed on those forged Phoenix Forestry manifests. Supposedly, they were rehoming the very dogs and children they trafficked. Rain began to drizzle, tapping the brim of my coat and drumming a nervous rhythm. My phone's screen cast a ghostly light on the invitation. Formal attire required. Black tie optional. Arrive by 8 for cocktails. I stared at the screen, heart hammering. The injustice stung. Someone was laundering reputations while hiding cages full of terrified souls. And they were hosting a fundraiser to polish their lies. Phoenix's paws splashed in puddles as she walked beside me, head low, ears flicking at every whisper of wind. The scar on her flank twinged in the damp. I paused, kneeling to scratch behind her ear. "Ready to crash their party?" I murmured. Her warm breath fogged against my glove. She thumped her tail once. That was all the answer I needed. I approached the pavilion's wide arched doors, gilded with snarling lion heads. 2 uniformed guards stood at the entrance, crisp and oblivious to what lay behind the velvet curtains. I straightened my tie and smoothed my coat, then slipped a hand into my pocket and produced a forged badge I'd photocopied from a retired charity inspector named Donovan, a callback to an old favor. "Inspector Reed," I said, voice polite but firm. Phoenix sat beside me, tail wagging in a surprisingly cheerful salute that drew no notice. The guards whispered, scanned the badge, and let me pass. Inside, chandeliers burned gold on polished marble. A string quartet flickered in the corner, the bow against violin string soft as rain on glass. Well-dressed guests hovered around tables of champagne and canapes, laughing like they'd never known fear. Somewhere beyond the glow of chandeliers, children and dogs still waited in darkness. I thumbed my earpiece. Detective Ruiz's voice crackled. "All set on your signal, but don't do anything obvious. If they suspect a raid, they'll dump the kids and dogs wherever they please." I closed my eyes against the swirl of crystal, imagining groups of terrified kids and shivering dogs, broken crates and empty cages. It was enough to steel my resolve. I moved deeper into the crowd, eyes scanning name tags. Dr. Lorraine Kane, Charles Whitfield, Chair of Youth Outreach, Freya Douglas, Board Member. I recognized a few names from the shipping documents. Trusted faces, philanthropic smiles. I slipped through laughing circles, following murmurs of speeches and clinking glasses. At the far side, a silent auction table glowed with framed photos. Happy families, puppies in baskets, children holding rescued puppies. Each photo beckoned with a tagline, "Help us find them a home." My stomach churned. The images were bait, tempting viewers to give money to save lives already destroyed by these traffickers. I knelt beside the display, Phoenix leash in one hand, camera in the other. I snapped photos of each sign and tag number, emails of donors who'd unwittingly funded the ring. A soft voice startled me. "Quite the interest in these pieces." I looked up to see a woman in a tailored suit, silver hair piled high, cool eyes that missed nothing. I'm documenting the arrangements, I said, standing. Phoenix pressed her head against my leg, her ribs rising in shallow breaths. The woman's gaze flicked from me to the dog. Then she smiled, slow, practiced. I'm Marianne Cross, president of Heartland Rescue. Bravo for attending. Will you be bidding tonight? I forced a polite nod. I'm interested in the family portrait, I said, pointing to a photo of a blond boy hugging a golden retriever beneath a flowering tree. Lot 12. Excellent choice, Marianne purred. It's a rare print. She leaned closer. You know, many people don't realize how vital our work is. We've reunited over 200 families in the past year alone. Her voice was syrup, but her eyes were steel. Perhaps I can count on your generosity. I met her gaze, feeling every lie refraction in that polished ballroom. We'll see, I said, handing back the silent auction paddle. I'm still admiring the selection. She nodded, satisfied, then drifted away, flanked by board members whispering praise about her leadership. My blood iced. Marianne Cross was the linchpin. Her name appeared on incorporation documents for Phoenix Forestry subsidiaries. She was the ringmaster of this cruelty masquerade. And tonight she was parading her success in reunion stories while children and animals languished underground. A hush spread as a podium light glowed. Applause followed heavy footsteps. A distinguished man in a tuxedo took the stage. Charles Whitfield. His voice boomed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, and thank you for helping Heartland Rescue break chains of abuse. Glasses rose, champagne flutes toasted, and the string quartet swelled. My teeth ground together. I slipped away toward the exit hallway, where I knew security cameras would be weaker. Phoenix padded silently behind, nostrils flaring as she caught stray scents of fear. I ducked into a janitor's closet, scanning the wall panel with the master key I'd found. The door clicked open. Inside was a narrow service corridor lit by flickering fluorescents. Pipes dripped overhead. I crouched beside a supply cart, heart hammering. I scanned a diagram scrawled on the back of a cardboard box. Emergency exits, gift shop, mechanical rooms, and beneath the stage, a storage vault sealed by a padlock. Likely where they stashed evidence of rescues, crates, documents, maybe even children or dogs awaiting faux adoption events. I extracted a slim crowbar from my coat and pried at the lock. Metal groaned and snapped free. The door creaked open, revealing concrete stairs descending into silence. I flicked my flashlight on and descended, Phoenix at my heels, her nails tapping a cautious drumbeat. At the bottom, the corridor curved, walls thick with damp. A faint whine echoed, pinched and desperate. Phoenix froze, hackles rising. My pulse thundered against my temples. I risked a glance around the corner. There, lined against the far wall, were cages, small wire pens with metal trays underneath. Two children sat on the floor beside a thin blanket, hugging each other, their eyes closed against tears. A Labrador and a Border Collie lay beside them, heads resting on paws, eyes haunted. The air smelled of mildew and fear. I swallowed, stepping forward. The children jerked to attention, faces sliding from shock to recognition. It's okay, I said, voice hushed. Phoenix sat at my side, chest heaving, tail wagging in a slow, comforting rhythm. We're here to help. One of the children, a girl with curly black hair and muddy knees, flinched when I reached out. Phoenix nudged her hand, warm and gentle, her muzzle soft as a promise. The girl exhaled, breath ragged. Phoenix, she whispered, pressing her palm to the dog's head. Her brother clung to her, blinking through tears. I found the padlock key on a hook by a utility box. Handwritten tag, vault. My hands trembled as I unlocked each cage. The collie stumbled free, shaking its fur like a wet rag. The Labrador nudged the girl's shoulder, tail thumping. I helped the children to their feet. Their clothes were damp, threadbare, eyes 2 worlds old. Come on, I murmured, guiding them back up the stairs. Phoenix bounded ahead, scanning each corner before settling at the foot of the stairs to guard. I scooped the girl into my arms, her arms wrapped tight around my neck. The boy stumbled against me, and I half carried, half led them toward the service door. Behind me, a muffled alarm began to wail, a heavy warning wail that cracked open my mind. Footsteps pounded from above. My earpiece buzzed with Ruiz's voice. Rendezvous Point Delta, now! I sprinted through the corridor, children clinging, Phoenix bounding in front like a fierce shadow. The second we burst through the closet door, Ruiz and her team flooded in. Medics knelt, wrapping blankets around the kids. Handlers scooped the dogs into crates. I leaned against the doorframe, panting. Phoenix pressed against my leg, soggy fur warm against my coat. The children peered around, eyes wide with confusion, hope, and a flicker of trust. Ruiz met my gaze. "Good God," she breathed, then barked orders into her radio. I sank to a crate, the adrenaline ebbing into a hollow ache. I watched Phoenix sit beside the girl, pressing her muzzle to the child's knee. The girl reached down, her hand trembling, and stroked Phoenix's ear. The dog closed her eyes against the touch. I closed mine, remembering the night I found Phoenix herself, abandoned, starving in a storm drain, her spirit on the brink. I'd carried her home, bandaged her wounds, promised her safety, and tonight she returned the favor, leading me through danger, saving children and dogs alike, guiding me by instinct to the darkest chamber. The rain outside intensified, thunder rolling like applause for our small victory. But inside, I felt the weight of every cage we hadn't found, every name I didn't yet know. Marianne Cross's voice droned somewhere above, unaware her gala had been interrupted by truth. Detective Ruiz stood beside me, rain-slick hair plastered to her forehead. "We'll need your statement, and those photos, but everything else we handle." She laid a hand on my shoulder. "Are you okay?" I exhaled, letting the tension spill out. "I will be," I said. "But there's more out there. They won't stop until they are exposed." She nodded. "Then we'll keep digging, because people like them feed on silence." I looked down at Phoenix, her muzzle resting on her paws, eyes heavy but alert. She'd carried us through another storm. I reached out and scratched her scar, fingertips tracing the path from her shoulder to her flank, her map of survival. "Good girl," I whispered. She lifted her head, gaze fierce and sure. And in that moment, I knew we were bound together for whatever came next. A man and his dog, two survivors refusing to be broken again. We walked out into the night, medics leading the children past wet lawn and flashing blue lights. The world outside the pavilion glowed deceptively calm under the drizzle. But I could taste the storm on the horizon. Legal battles, public outrage, threats from hidden puppeteers. Phoenix nudged my hand, reminding me of a promise. Wherever the trail led, she would guide me. I squared my shoulders, chest tight with purpose. "Let's go," I said softly. "We have the next lead to follow." Behind us, as we faded into the fog, the pavilion's interior lights flickered, shadows dancing behind broken glass. The ballroom had been a stage for lies, but tonight we'd stolen the spotlight from them. And as long as Phoenix and I drew breath, the real stories would find a way into daylight. I slipped my hand into my pocket and checked my phone. A new tip: coordinates for a warehouse in the industrial district. Phoenix stiffened, ears pricked. I met her gaze. "One more," I said. She barked once, fierce and true. Together we vanished into the rain, ready for the next part of this journey. I checked my phone again as Phoenix led me down the cracked pavement beside the old steel mills. An abandoned warehouse at the edge of the industrial district, coordinates blinking on the screen. Steam hissed from broken pipes overhead, and the moon cast iron-gray shadows across rusted shipping containers. My boots crunched on gravel, echoing in the silence, and Phoenix padded beside me, muzzle low, eyes glowing in my flashlight beam. We slipped through a gap in the chain-link fence, barbed wire overhead slicing at scarves of fog. The warehouse loomed, its corrugated walls pitted with age, slanting windows boarded up like a coffin. Somewhere inside, children and dogs might still be hidden, leftover captives from the network's lesser-known cells. I swallowed, heart pounding. Phoenix pressed against my leg, warm and steady, as if reminding me I wouldn't go alone. I found the service door I'd spotted on satellite images, a heavy metal slab sealed with 3 padlocks. I knelt beside it, unscrewing a small electrical panel with tools borrowed from Ruiz. Sparks danced, wires shifted, and with a soft buzz, the locks released in sequence. The door creaked open to a spray of stale air and scattered footprints on the concrete floor. Inside, the warehouse was cavernous, Rows of empty pallets, toppled barrels leaking dark liquid, and tattered tarps concealing half-open crates. My flashlight beam danced across the walls, catching glints of reflective tape. "Stay close," I murmured. Phoenix's nails tapped in reply. We moved in silence, following the tracks that led deeper into the belly of the building. A distant whine reached my ears, metal on metal, like a crate being wheeled across a steel grate. Phoenix stiffened, lifting her head. She sniffed the air, then bolted forward, tail a sharp flag in the gloom. I sprinted behind her, heart thundering. We rounded a stack of barrels and found ourselves in a secondary chamber. Smaller, windowless, lit by a single bare bulb swinging on a frayed cord. Underneath it, a makeshift play area. Stuffed animals strewn on cracked linoleum, a battered tricycle, and scrawled childish drawings taped to a sagging wall. The air smelled of disinfectant and fear. My throat tightened. Phoenix nosed at a low platform. I knelt and reached underneath, finding a girl's sandal caked in dirt. She'd been here. I cracked my neck and pressed on. A row of heavy crates lined one wall, each labeled with a code. PX-04, PX-07, PX-12. One crate lay on its side, boards pulled back. A small paw print, wet, fresh, dotted the edge. I climbed inside, flashlight in hand, and saw the frightened eyes of a young boy, curled beneath tattered blankets. He whimpered as I lifted him out, body trembling. His clothes were soaked, arms bruised. Phoenix pressed her body against his back, letting him lean into her warmth. "He's okay," I breathed, hoisting him over my shoulder. The boy buried his face in my coat, silent tears shaking his frame. I patted his legs. "We're getting you out." Footsteps pounded from the corridor behind us. The network's guard dogs, two black shepherds, burst in, hackles raised, teeth bared. I caught a glimpse of a silhouette at the door, a tall figure in Phoenix forestry gear, rifle in hand, my stomach a knot of dread. Phoenix snarled, teeth flashing. The shepherds hesitated, noses twitching at her unfamiliar scent. I held the boy tighter, heart slamming against my ribs. The silhouette took aim. "Get back!" I shouted, yanking the boy behind a barrel. But Phoenix lunged instead, body low, jaws clamping on one shepherd's flank. The dog yelped, shaking her free. The other hurtled at Phoenix, but she twisted, knocking it into the wall. The guard raised his rifle. I flung myself forward, dropping the boy at my feet. "No!" I screamed. A shot rang out, echoing like thunder. Phoenix's head snapped up. Blood spattered across the concrete as she staggered backward, hind legs shaking. My heart shattered. I dropped to my knees, eyes wide in horror. The boy ran to her side, hands trembling as he reached for her wound. The guard hesitated, rifle trembling, then looked at me and the child. In that moment, suspended between mercy and malice, he lowered the weapon. He turned and fled, footsteps pounding toward the exit. I scooped Phoenix into my arms, pressing my hand to her wound, vision swimming. The boy cried out, "Please, don't let her die." His sobs cut through the din of my own panic. I pressed my lips to Phoenix's muzzle. "Hold on, girl, hold on." The warehouse door burst open as Ruiz and her team flooded in. Medics, officers, the boy's sister bristling with relief and anger. Jenna knelt beside me, her voice urgent. "We've got medics on the way. We need to move her now." I wrapped Phoenix in a thermal blanket, careful not to disturb the shrapnel lodged in her flank. The boy grabbed my arm. "Is she going to be okay?" I forced a nod, though my chest felt slammed by a sledgehammer. "She's the toughest dog I know," I said. "She's coming home." They carried Phoenix out on a stretcher as the boy's sister clung to his hand. Jessie, the girl, stayed at the ambulance door, pressing against the glass as medics worked over Phoenix. My vision blurred with rain and tears. Ruiz placed a hand on my shoulder. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I never wanted this." I swallowed around the lump in my throat. "She saved lives," I whispered. "She saved hers." The ambulance doors slammed, lights flashing, and it roared away into the night. I watched until the taillights vanished, then turned to the two children trembling in the drizzle. Phoenix had led them to safety, but now she was the one who needed rescuing. Jenna handed me a folded drawing the children had made. a picture of Phoenix, tail wagging, standing beneath a rainbow. The boy pressed it into my hand. "She's our hero," he said, voice cracking. "Please tell her thank you." I folded the drawing close to my heart, knuckles white. "I will," I promised. The warehouse lay behind us, silent and empty. The ring's cages stood open, but the cost was written in Phoenix's blood on her flank. I slid my hand into my pocket and found a syringe of veterinary sedative Jenna had slipped me. If she went into shock, I'd need to keep her calm until the vet. I loaded it with trembling fingers. The children followed me to the safe house, overseen by officers who promised to keep them safe. I climbed into my car and closed my eyes for a moment, pressing my forehead against the steering wheel. The weight of every stolen life pressed down like lead, but the image of Phoenix's loyal eyes kept me tethered. I started the engine and drove to the emergency vet hospital. Lights gleaming through the rain-soaked streets. My knuckles rapped against the wheel as I repeated a prayer for her recovery. Fight, girl, fight. Through the windshield, the city stretched out in neon ribbons, nights without rest ahead of me. But in my heart, a spark kept burning. As long as Phoenix drew breath, so would I. We'd been through every nightmare together, and I would not lose her now. I reached the hospital doors, leapt out, and carried Phoenix inside, calling her name through tears. The vet team took her from me, whisking her into surgery. I sank into a chair, rubbing the rain from my coat, each second stretching like an eternity. And there, beneath the harsh fluorescent lights, I made a vow. The ring that shot my Phoenix would be torn down, brick by bloody brick. I would expose every link, bring every perpetrator to justice, and I would carry Phoenix's spirit with me, always. If you believe in fighting for those who can't fight for themselves, drop a like, share this story, and hit subscribe. We're just getting started. I jolted awake to the beeping of machines and the sterile glare of fluorescent lights. The vet tech's gloved hand tightened on mine as Phoenix lay motionless beneath crisp white sheets, a bandage wrapped around her flank. My chest ached with every labored breath she drew. Outside the operating room door, the hallway stretched, silent except for distant footsteps and the steady hum of the hospital's life support systems. The night before had collapsed into chaos. Gunshot, blood, the boy's pleas, Phoenix's fall. Now I was tethered to this moment, fingers entwined with fur I could no longer feel. My phone buzzed with messages from Ruiz. Updates on the raid, social media reactions, names of suspects starting to surface. But none of that mattered until Phoenix stirred again. Then after what felt like an eternity, the door slid open. The vet emerged, exhaustion etched into her face. "She's stable," she said quietly. Relief and fear collided in my chest. "She's lost a lot of blood, but the bullet didn't nick any major organs. She's breathing on her own, but she needs rest and care. No visitors for at least 12 hours. I nodded, voice stuck behind a nod of gratitude and guilt. "Thank you," I managed. She offered a small, empathetic smile and walked away, leaving me alone with the faint hiss of the ventilator. I sank into the plastic chair, the cold seeping through my jeans. My mind replayed every instant of the rescue, the boy's face lighting up when Phoenix snarled at the shepherds, the hush that fell as the medics loaded her into the ambulance. I thought of the countless animals and children still out there, trapped by lies and steel cages. Phoenix had bled for them, and for me. I couldn't let her sacrifice be in vain. Hours passed in a haze of restless pacing and skyrocketing adrenaline. Finally, I stood, quieting my racing heart, and slipped into the storage closet behind the nurse's station. I dialed Ruiz on my secure line. "How did the site sweep go?" I whispered. She exhaled, her voice tight with weariness. "We found 2 more hidden rooms, another dozen kids and half a dozen dogs. They'd barricaded one entrance and rigged another with booby traps. It's a wonder we didn't lose more." She paused. "We also arrested a mid-level logistics manager with ties to World Aid International." "World Aid?" My stomach churned. "They're involved?" She sighed. "It seems they funneled donations through charity branches, then siphoned funds into shell companies. Those companies paid off local officials to look the other way." Her next words made my blood run cold. "We traced their paper trail to a PIAX in DC. Crosses connected to them as well. I pressed my hand against the cold wall. So Marianne Cross and her network reach into the highest offices. Ruiz's sigh crackled through the line. Yes, we need more evidence before we go public. But don't worry, our forensic team is working the finances now. I ended the call, swallowing the rage that bubbled up. The conspiracy spread wider than I'd feared, infecting nonprofits, think tanks, even lawmakers. Phoenix had torn open one corner of the web. Now we had to dismantle it thread by thread. But first, I needed to know everything she endured. I gently pushed open the operating room door. Phoenix's eyes fluttered as she stirred. I slid onto the side of her bed and brushed a strand of fur behind her ear. She licked my hand, faint but determined. Her breath hitched and I spoke softly. Hey girl, you're safe now. I promise we'll finish this. Her tail thumped once against the bed frame, a code I knew as clearly as any word. She was telling me to keep going, and so I would. That afternoon, after Phoenix was moved to a recovery ward under 24-hour observation, I made my way to the precinct. Ruiz awaited me in her office, stacks of case files around her. She slid a folder across the desk. This came in anonymously, she said. The cover read, Phoenix Forestry, Southern Logistics. Inside were shipping manifests, invoices, and internal emails, documents that placed Cross's companies at the center of the trafficking operation. One email from June read, prepare the shipment for the gala event, ensure clean manifests, code 47B Huskies. Another note, scrawled in red ink across a printed spreadsheet, warned, interference risk, Inspector Reed is sniffing around. Proceed with caution. I stared at the emails, heart clenched. Someone on the inside was helping us. But who? And why trust me? Ruiz tapped the file. This is what we need to bring down Cross and her affiliates. But we have to move carefully. These people have political cover. I leaned back in my chair, mind racing. Who sent this? Her eyes flicked to the window. We don't know, but the whistleblower cited your rescue operation, said the dog led the way. They trust you. A slow fury and gratitude bloomed. Phoenix's instinct had saved lives, and now someone was repaying that debt in ink and paper. I closed the file. Then let's make it count. Over the next 2 days, I juggled two worlds, Phoenix's recovery and the unfolding investigation. Visiting her in the hospital was my anchor. She'd perk up at the sight of me, tail wagging through her sedation haze, eyes bright with gratitude. I'd read to her from journal entries I was compiling. Stories of the children we'd saved, the dogs we'd freed. Each word seemed to nourish her, and I saw her strength returning. Meanwhile, Ruiz's team combed the documents. We coordinated raids on affiliated warehouses in 3 states, seizing more evidence. Ledger books, binding contracts, coded audio recordings of Cross's board meetings. One clip sent a chill through me, Marianne's voice, crisp and confident. We've moved 20 new loads this quarter. The payoff keeps us safe in DC. As long as the money flows, the law bends. Her admission was priceless. We now had intent, conspiracy, and direct involvement from top leadership. Late one evening, Phoenix and I sat in her dog bed in my living room, now converted into a makeshift command center. Spread before us were maps dotted with raid locations, timelines, and suspect profiles. I scratched behind her ear and spoke out loud. Tomorrow, we present everything to the U.S. Attorney's Office. They'll indict Cross, her pack, and every officer who looked the other way. Phoenix tilted her head, eyes steady. I felt her pride as if it were my own. She'd carried me through fire, and now we would turn that fire on the conspirators. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. They know. Stay off the grid or you'll disappear like the rest. No signature. My heart froze. The message cut through the night. Cross's network wouldn't go down without a fight. I looked at Phoenix. She leaned into my side, urging calm. I drew a deep breath, resolving to move forward. They can't scare us, I said, voice firm. We've come too far. The next morning, I met Ruiz and the U.S. Attorney in a secure conference room. Evidence lined the table. Digital recordings, forensic financial reports, the whistleblower's file. The attorney, a stern woman named Bryant, reviewed each item with rapt intensity. How reliable is the whistleblower? Bryant asked. Ruiz nodded. Their information has already led to 5 seizures and dozens of arrests. We've cross-verified every shipment manifest. Bryant tapped a pen on the table. And the audio? I played a short clip of Cross's voice. The recording crackled, then commanded, "Double the volume next quarter. I want more adoptions." The donors love a feel-good headline. When it ended, Bryant set her pen down. "This is damning. We have conspiracy, racketeering, trafficking. This goes straight to RICO. We'll file tomorrow." Relief and triumph flooded me. I exhaled so hard the papers fluttered. We were moments away from toppling a criminal empire built on the vulnerable, children and dogs alike. Phoenix's path had led us here. But Bryant raised a finger. "One more thing." She turned her laptop around to show us a surveillance photo from Cross's gala. Marianne shaking hands with a well-known senator from our state. "We need to be prepared for political fallout." I absorbed the implication. This case would rock Washington. Powerful allies would retaliate. Our victory could cost us everything. That night, I sat by Phoenix's crate in the recovery ward, whispering updates. Her eyes were brighter now, tail wagging at every word. I pressed my cheek to her head. "Tomorrow we finish this," I vowed. "We'll bring them to justice." She exhaled softly, a contented sigh that sounded like hope itself. And in that moment, I knew whatever storms lay ahead. Threatened lawsuits, political smears, even danger to our lives, Phoenix and I would face them together. The world would soon see the truth hidden behind philanthropic veneers. And when the first indictments dropped, the thunder of justice would roll across the country. Phoenix whined softly, as if echoing the coming storm. I stood and slipped my jacket around her. "Rest now," I whispered. "Tomorrow, we strike." She closed her eyes, breathing steady. I switched off the bedside lamp and stepped into the corridor, determination burning in my veins. The final act of this investigation was within reach, and nothing would stop me. The courtroom was silent, save for the scratch of pens on paper and the rhythmic ticking of a wall clock. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting latticed patterns across the polished wooden benches. I sat beside Detective Ruiz, Phoenix curled at my feet on a soft blanket, her coat gleaming in the light. Today was the arraignment hearing for Marianne Cross and her top executives. Every name on the indictment list was about to face a judge, and the eyes of the nation were on us. I closed my eyes for a moment and pictured the night I found Phoenix trembling in that storm drain. Back then, I never imagined we'd be here, exposing phantom charities, unraveling political favors, and standing up for children and dogs who had no voice. But Phoenix's steadfast loyalty had shown me the way, guiding me into every dark corner until the truth was stripped bare. A bailiff opened the heavy doors, and Cross entered, flanked by attorneys in crisp suits. Her eyes swept the room, gliding past me in the silent rows of supporters, as if she expected a hero's welcome. Instead, she met my gaze for a heartbeat, her expression unreadable. Then she turned politely to the judge and lifted her chin. The judge's gavel came down with a crack, jolting everyone to attention. The charges were read: human trafficking, animal cruelty, racketeering, fraud, conspiracy. Each one driven home by evidence Phoenix and I had uncovered. As each count echoed through the chamber, I felt an electric surge of satisfaction and dread. Satisfaction that justice had caught up to her, dread for the battles to come outside these walls. When the bail amount was set at $10 million and Cross's bail was denied pending further hearings, a murmur rippled through the gallery. Someone in the back gasped. Phoenix raised her head, ears twitching. I reached down and stroked her back. "We did it," I whispered. After the hearing, reporters swarmed us in the hallway. Flashbulbs popped, microphones thrust forward. For a moment, I stood hushed, letting Ruiz field questions. But then a young reporter pressed her microphone to my face. "Inspector Reed, how did you manage to bring down such a powerful network?" I swallowed. The words came softly but clearly. "We listened to a dog." The flash of cameras brightened into applause, some jubilant, some incredulous. But I meant every word. Phoenix lifted her muzzle, sniffed the air, and let out a low, triumphant bark. That afternoon, I walked Phoenix through the courthouse plaza. The spring air was crisp, sweet with blooming jasmine from nearby planters. Phoenix trotted beside me, tail wagging, occasionally glancing up to make sure I was with her. I'd requested this walk to show public support for the cause, a reminder that our fight was about compassion, not politics. As we rounded a fountain, children in school uniforms pointed and whispered, "That's the dog who saved the kids." One brave boy approached, eyes wide. "Are you the hero dog?" he asked. Phoenix sat and barked gently, tongue lolling. The boy giggled and reached out to pet her. I smiled and explained, "Phoenix is the real hero. She led us to every hidden cage. I just followed her lead." The boy's face lit up, and he ran off to tell his friends. I knelt beside Phoenix and murmured, "You've changed lives, girl. You've changed the world." She pressed her head into my hand, ear warm against my palm, as if soaking in the praise she deserved. But beneath the smiles and cheers lay a darker current. News anchors buzzed about the political fallout from Cross's indictment. Senators aligned with her pack were distancing themselves. Anonymous calls had started coming in, threatening legal action or worse if I didn't back off. I'd tried to ignore them, focusing on Phoenix's recovery and the case files. Yet every ring of the phone felt like a ripple in a pond, warning of whirlpools beneath. That evening, I returned to the precinct. Phoenix settled into her crate under my desk, exhausted but alert. I spread the latest witness statements across the table. Foster parents who had unwittingly referred children to Heartland Rescue, vets who had signed certificates for adopted dogs, journalists who'd been paid to spin feel-good stories. Each statement deepened the conspiracy, revealing ordinary people used as pawns. Detective Ruiz entered, steaming mug in hand. "Bryant wanted us to meet tomorrow with the lead prosecutor. They're building the RICO case now." She paused, sighing. "They'll need depositions from the whistleblower, and we need to protect their identity." I nodded, thinking of the nameless hero who'd trusted me. "We'll get it done." Ruiz sat and looked at me. "Are you okay?" Her concern cut through my fatigue. I glanced at Phoenix, who raised her head at the sound of our voices. "I am," I said, "but this fight's not over. We've got to hold every conspirator accountable, from Cross to the politicians who covered for her." Ruiz blew across her mug. "I know, but you're human. Even Phoenix had to rest." She pointed at the crate. "Why don't you take a break? I'll hold the fort." I hesitated. Every hour felt precious, but I nodded. "Just a quick one." I grabbed my keys and walked outside. The air had turned cool, dew forming on the grass. I found a bench under a magnolia tree and sat. Phoenix curled beside me. I closed my eyes, listening to her steady breathing. For the first time in weeks, I let myself feel peace instead of urgency. A soft hum alerted me, and I opened my eyes to see Detective Patel approaching, file in hand. "Got a minute?" She sat and handed me the folder. New info on Cross's PAC finances. Inside were bank records showing large donations from shell corporations tied to a senator's portfolio. Senator Keller, one of Cross's staunchest defenders, had accepted millions in cash. "This is the smoking gun," Patel said. My heart pounded. If we could prove that Cross had paid off Keller explicitly to secure immunity, the scandal would erupt on Capitol Hill, but the backlash would be colossal. "This needs to go straight to Bryant," I said, voice steady. "We can't delay." Patel slapped the folder shut. "I'll set up the meeting." She rose, hesitant. "Be safe. They won't go down quietly." I nodded. As Patel walked away, I looked at Phoenix. She tilted her head as if sensing the battle ahead. I reached down and scratched her behind the ear. "You ready for one more round?" I asked. She gave a soft whine, her eyes fierce. The next morning, I arrived at the U.S. Attorney's office with Ruiz and Patel. Phoenix waited outside under a shaded canopy, leash loosely coiled at her paws. Detectives in suits hustled around us, everyone carrying folders bristling with evidence. Inside the secure conference room, Bryant and her team laid out the case plan. "This senator will be the linchpin," Bryant said, pointing to Keller's bank records on a screen. "If we can tie him to explicit bribe payments in Cross's name, the RICO charges will stick. We need your testimonies and proof that you obtained those documents lawfully." She looked at me directly. "Inspector Reed, your chain of custody on the whistleblower files must be airtight." I took a breath. "I'll testify. Ruiz and Patel can support the collection methods." I felt Phoenix's presence at the door, a silent guardian. Bryant nodded. We'll set depositions next week and file the superseding indictment soon after. Expect pushback. Keller's legal team will be powerful. But we have the evidence. She tapped a pen against the table. Bring your best game. This is how we take down the whole network. As we left the building, reporters shouted questions at us, but I stayed silent, focused on Phoenix, who met my gaze with unwavering trust. Across the street, kids pointed and whispered again. I offered them a small wave, then walked on. Back at the precinct, I entered my office to find a package on my desk. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a child's drawing of Phoenix standing tall beside me. Banner overhead reading, Heroes. Below in neat block letters, Thank you. No signature. I stared at the drawing, tears stinging my eyes. Whoever sent it, perhaps the whistleblower or one of the rescued children, had risked everything to express gratitude. This simple gift rekindled my resolve. I pinned the drawing above my computer and turned to my monitor, where spreadsheets and legal briefs awaited. The calls and threats could wait until tomorrow. Tonight I had Phoenix beside me, a partner who had fought through darkness and pain to lead us here. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out her harness, running my fingers over its familiar leather. Its worn straps told our story: the storm drain, the warehouse raids, the courtroom victory. I clipped it on her collar, feeling the weight of every memory we'd made together. Phoenix stood and stretched, wagging her tail. She sniffed the drawing on the wall, then looked up at me, eyes bright as embers. Let's get back to work, I told her. She barked softly as if in agreement. In the hallway, Ruiz caught sight of us. Suit up, she said with a grin. We've got depositions to sit through, and maybe a certain senator to surprise. I laughed, a low, hopeful sound. Lead the way. Phoenix trotted ahead, the click of her harness echoing like a battle drum. Together, we headed down the corridor, ready for the next challenge. The fight for justice was far from over, but with her by my side, I knew we'd face it head on. If you believe in standing up for the voiceless, hit subscribe, like, and share this video. Phoenix and I are just getting started, and we need you with us every step of the way. I didn't hear the footsteps until Phoenix growled, a low, rumbling warning that vibrated through the floorboards. We were parked outside the courthouse annex, waiting for Senator Keller's deposition to begin, and the midday sun had baked the sidewalk to a dull shimmer. I crouched beside Phoenix, brushing my fingers through her fur, but her hackles stayed raised. A black SUV eased onto the curb, windows tinted so dark they swallowed the interior. The door cracked open and a single hand emerged, gripping a sealed envelope. The passenger door swung wide and a man in a pressed suit stepped onto the pavement. His face was sharp, jaw clenched, as if every moment of his life had been spent in rigid control. Phoenix bared her teeth at him, growling again. I stood, blocking the SUV. The man's eyes flicked from me to Phoenix, recognition dawning. Horror, maybe. He flattened his lips into a practiced smile and lifted the envelope. Inspector Reed, he said, voice smooth as oil, I have something for you. I braced on the hood of the car. No direct contact, I warned. If you have evidence, turn it over to Detective Ruiz. He shrugged, hand tightening on the envelope. Detective Ruiz is compromised, he said softly. Dr. Keller arranged for her replacement. You'll find the new detective less objective. My heart froze. You're lying, he smirked. Am I? He reached inside his jacket and revealed a badge. Federal Internal Affairs. My pulse thundered. Agent Delacroix, I'm here on oversight. Phoenix's growl deepened. Delacroix held her gaze for a tense moment, then waved the envelope. You'll want to see this. He dropped it at my feet, slipped back into the SUV, and roared off, tires shrieking on asphalt. I picked up the envelope with fingers that trembled. Inside were two photographs. One showed Ruiz handing a dossier to a suited man behind closed doors. The other showed Keller escorting Ruiz into a private meeting at an off-the-books gala. A note on the back read, "Trust no one. They're playing at two tables." My stomach churned. Phoenix nudged my hand, urging calm. I knelt and pressed my palm to her flank. Okay, I whispered. We'll figure this out. Inside the annex, the buzzing fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Senator Keller took the stand. He sat tall, suit impeccable, eyes cool behind silver-rimmed glasses. Across from him, Bryant sat with steely poise, reviewing a stack of exhibits. Ruiz was absent, reassigned for the public's confidence, the clerk had announced. In her place sat Agent Webb from Internal Affairs, his expression unreadable. As Keller spoke, his voice measured, I watched Webb's pen glide across his notepad, then flicker to the photos I'd shown him just before the hearing. Keller's testimony was designed to deflect. I have no recollection of such donations, he said, voice smooth. My office has strict protocols. Any insinuation otherwise is politically motivated. I leaned forward, heart in my throat. Webb's gaze lifted, meeting mine for an instant. His eyes narrowed, questioning, uncertain. He tapped the photos into evidence and handed them to Bryant. These were dropped anonymously at my car, I declared, keeping my voice even. They detail meetings between Detective Ruiz and Senator Keller, meetings outside official channels. Keller's composure cracked for a heartbeat, lips thinning, eyes flicking to the door. He inhaled, then exhaled in a forced smile. Detective Ruiz, he repeated. She's been separated from the case. Bryant held his stare. The photos contradict your statement. Under oath, you must clarify. Keller's hands curled around the arms of the chair. The room quieted, every breath magnified. Finally, he spoke, voice tight. I was briefed by Ms. Ruiz on certain security vulnerabilities regarding my schedule. No other business was discussed. Bryant pressed on, but Keller's answers grew evasive. At noon, the judge adjourned for a lunch break, leaving the room crackling with tension. Reporters swarmed the hallway outside, hungry for scoops. I slipped out and found Webb pacing in a corridor. Phoenix stayed close as I approached him. You believe me? I asked, voice low. He looked at the photos, then at Phoenix. I've never met a canine with your dog's intuition, he said. Delacroix's badge is legitimate. He's been investigating IA corruption. Ruiz may have been compromised. He closed his eyes. I need time, but keep your evidence safe. I exhaled, relief and worry mingling. Thank you, I said. Webb nodded, then disappeared into the courtroom. Phoenix nudged my hand, and I patted her. Let's find Ruiz, I told her. We need her on our side. Detective Ruiz's home was tucked in a quiet cul-de-sac, street lamps casting halos on manicured lawns. I knocked on her door and waited, tension coiling in my gut. Phoenix stood alert behind me, scanning the street. After a moment, the door cracked open. Ruiz's face was drawn, pale, but her eyes sharpened when she saw me. Phoenix, she breathed, crouching to stroke the dog's head. Phoenix leaned into her, tail thumping once. I held out the photos. You need to explain. Ruiz swallowed, glancing toward the street before ushering me inside. The living room was neat, coffee tables strewn with case files and printouts. She closed the door and locked it. You shouldn't have these, she said, voice tight. I folded my arms. Agent Delacroix said he'd warned you. Her shoulders slumped. He did. I was looking into corruption in IA, into Webb himself. It's a mess of power plays. Keller had dirt on me from a decade ago, something he used to threaten my career. I cooperated to protect myself. Her gaze fell. I never meant to betray the case. Phoenix sat beside Ruiz, leaning in as if offering comfort. The dog's presence somehow grounded the moment. I exhaled slowly. We need you, Detective. Bryant needs the full picture. Ruiz nodded, eyes glistening. I'll testify. I'll hand over everything I have. Files, recordings, wire transfers. But they'll come for me next. I crouched and met her eyes. We'll protect you. Phoenix placed a paw on my knee, then on Ruiz's. The simple gesture sealed our alliance. With Ruiz back on the team, we reconvened at the precinct. Webb was waiting, leaning over his desk with a grim expression. Brian's filing a superseding indictment tomorrow, he said. We've got all we need for RICO charges against Cross, Keller, and several high-ranking officials in IA. But we've uncovered one more lead, an offshore account tied to Phoenix Forestry's Belize subsidiary. Ruiz tapped her pen on a printed bank statement. The routing code matches the contractor who built the cages in the old warehouse. I closed my eyes, thinking back to every crate Phoenix sniffed out. Then let's trace it, Webb nodded. We'll coordinate with the Treasury Department. We need the funds frozen before they vanish. As plans were laid, Phoenix rested at my feet, head on her paws. I reached down and scratched behind her ears. "You led us here," I whispered, thinking of her first rescue, the night in the storm drain, and every step since. "Let's finish this." The room pulsed with urgency, raids to coordinate, legal motions to file, depositions to give. But I felt a calm certainty. With Phoenix's instinct, Ruiz's inside knowledge, and Webb's integrity, we would unravel the last threads of this conspiracy. That evening, I drove home with Phoenix riding shotgun, rain pattering against the windshield. I looked at her through the glass, fierce, loyal, unbreakable. I reached over and gently squeezed her harness. "One more stop," I said. "We take their money away." Phoenix blinked as if she understood. We turned the corner and sped toward the undercover unit's financial crimes division, the next leg of our battle for justice. Above us, the sky held the promise of thunder, a storm we would face together, until every caged child and animal was free and every corrupt official stood exposed in the light. Light spilled through the blinds as dawn fractured the horizon into pale amber and steel gray. I sat at my kitchen table, maps and bank statements spread before me like a cryptic puzzle. Phoenix lay curled at my feet, her breathing steady beside the hum of the coffee maker. Last night's revelation, that Belize accounts held the ring's final lifeline, had shifted everything. Today we would strike at its heart. My thumb traced the map's red line, a warehouse on the waterfront, rumored shell company HQ. Offshore financial agents had confirmed the routing numbers. Now the Treasury's Financial Crimes Unit was mobilizing for a joint operation. I stared at Phoenix's scar, her map of survival, and felt my resolve steels like forged steel. The phone buzzed. Ruiz's voice crackled through. "Task force is assembled, embassy liaisons secured for diplomatic cover, officers staging at shipping docks, containers scheduled to depart this afternoon." "Understood," I replied. "I'll meet you at the port." I filled Phoenix's water bowl, clipped on her harness, and we were out the door. The morning air bit at my cheeks as we drove south toward the harbor district. I glanced at Phoenix, her ears perked, eyes alert. She'd sniffed the trail from the start. Now she'd guide me to the final cages I'd never forgive myself for leaving open. At the port, shipping containers stacked like monoliths loomed against the sky. Cranes swung metal like pendulums. The scent of salt water and diesel hung thick. I met Ruiz and Agent Webb near Dock 12, where uniformed officers cordoned off the entry. Undercover operatives in plainclothes milled about, clipboards in hand. "Customs seized manifests," Webb said, voice low. "These containers are booked under Phoenix Forestry, Belize, marked as agricultural equipment, but we've got affidavits tying them to offshore accounts." He flicked through a folder. "We need you and Phoenix to lead the identification. Dogs can smell the hidden doors." I knelt beside Phoenix, whispering in her ear. She inhaled deeply, tail thumping once. "Find them," I urged. She rose, nose low, and began weaving between containers, harness rattling softly. We passed half a dozen crates labeled PXBEL 001 through PXBEL 010. Phoenix paused at PXBEL 007, pawing at a seam between two metal panels. My pulse raced. I knelt and pried the weld seam with a pry bar. A hidden hatch swung open. Inside, sealed cages sat stacked too high. Darkness obscured their contents, but faint sounds rippled through metal. Whimpers, panting. "Here," I called. Officers swarmed beside me, snapping open the cages. Inside were 4 German shepherds, ribs visible beneath matted fur, eyes dull with fear. They stumbled forward, tails tentative. A veterinarian on site knelt, offering water and soft murmurs. Phoenix nosed inside the hatch further, harness scraping metal. I followed her lead to the next container, PXBEL-004. She pawed again. This hatch revealed 2 children huddled in a corner, faces pale beneath dirt. They stared as we lifted them out, clutching Phoenix's leash like lifelines. My throat closed. "Medic!" I shouted. Padres of the task force rushed in, gathering the children and dogs into blankets and crates. The siblings trembled against Phoenix's flank, who licked their hands gently, tail wagging in small, comforting arcs. But we weren't done. Phoenix led us onward, opening PXBEL 002 and PXBEL 009. By midday, 12 children and 8 dogs were freed, some trembling, some wagging uncertainly. Each time I saw fear turn to relief in their eyes, I felt Phoenix's miracle echo in my chest. As officers rounded up the evidence, crates, shipping logs, forged bills, I noticed a tall container marked PXBEL010, seal intact. Phoenix sniffed at it, hackles raised. I stepped forward, tools in hand. When I pried open the latch, the last hatch revealed a man in a cargo vest, one of Cross's lieutenants, bound and gagged. I yanked him free. He collapsed to his knees, voice muffled but eyes wide with terror. Phoenix pressed against him, muzzle parted in a protective snarl as officers cuffed him. I wanted to ask if he'd spared any before me, but for now he'd face justice. Outside, the afternoon sun burned bright on metal, reflecting off the water. The rescued children and dogs milled around waiting buses, medics shepherding them to safety. Phoenix stood at my side, tail high, gaze steady as if surveying her kingdom reclaimed. Ruiz approached, hand on my shoulder. "We got the funds frozen," she said, voice hushed. "Accounts drained. Prison sentences pending on all named." She let out a long breath. "This is it. The core of Phoenix Forestry dismantled." I nodded, eyes misting. "We did it!" Phoenix barked once, crisp as a starting gun. Her eyes glinted with the same fierce intelligence that had carried us through every raid, every courtroom, every dark warehouse. She'd saved me so many times. Today I'd saved her legacy. We walked toward the command van, Phoenix sniffing at the ground. I paused and knelt, brushing my fingers through her fur. "This was your journey," I whispered. "Thank you." She leaned into me, head heavy against my chest. Her single woomph of contentment told me she understood. That evening, the freed children slept in safe houses. The rescued dogs were enclosed in vet care, and the final press conference loomed. Cross's empire had crumbled. Keller was set to be indicted within days. But there was one final act left: to expose the charity fronts and ensure no one else could rebuild them. I stood behind the podium in a makeshift media tent near the port, Phoenix seated loyally at my side. Flash bulbs popped as I spoke into the mic. Today marks the end of a dark chapter. These children and animals have been restored to safety because one dog refused to look away from injustice. We will never forget their courage, and we will never allow this cruelty to return. Behind me, rescued children held handmade signs, drawings of dogs, hearts, and the phrase, "Free at last." Phoenix stood, ears pricked, tail sweeping the ground. Reporters scribbled, cameras rolled. My voice shook, not from fear, but from the weight of every life saved. I concluded, let this moment remind us that loyalty can change the world. If you see something wrong, speak up. If you can help, step forward. And always, always listen to the ones who guide us when we cannot see their world. Like my partner here, who led us from darkness into the light. I patted Phoenix's head. She barked once, a crisp punctuation. The crowd erupted in applause. As the press conference ended, I looked down at Phoenix. Her eyes met mine, soft, triumphant. I knelt and drew her into a hug. "Your story isn't over," I whispered. "We'll tell it together." She wagged her tail, gears clicking in her harness like a promise of adventures to come. Night fell on the harbor, cranes silent, containers locked. I walked Phoenix along the water's edge, waves lapping against the pier. The moon glowed low, painting silver paths across the sea. In the distance, a cargo ship from Belize lay docked, now impounded. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small velvet box, the same kind in which I had once found my father's watch. Inside was a medal inscribed, "For unwavering loyalty and courage, Phoenix." I clipped it to her harness, watching it catch the moonlight. She tilted her head as I fastened it. Then she nudged me toward the water, where a bench overlooked the waves. We sat, silent, letting the night cradle our exhaustion and triumph. I closed my eyes, breathing the salt breeze. The world had shifted beneath our feet, dark webs untangled by the instincts of one brave dog. But our journey continued, for there would always be shadows to chase, injustices to expose, and hearts to mend. I opened my eyes and whispered, "What's next, girl?" She wagged her tail, eyes bright. I stood and clipped on her leash. "Tomorrow we rest, and then we find the next story that needs a hero." Phoenix barked in agreement, a single note that echoed through the moonlit harbor. If you believe that loyalty can conquer darkness, hit subscribe, like, and share this video, because every voice matters and every story needs to be heard. Dawn broke along the riverbank in muted shades of lavender and gold, the water's surface a mirror for the awakening sky. Phoenix and I stood on the dewy grass beside the old footbridge where so many of this city's lost souls, including children and dogs, had once crossed from darkness into safety. Today, though, the air was quiet with promise. We had dismantled a trafficking empire. We had exposed corrupt politicians. But now the work of healing had begun. I rubbed Phoenix's ears as we set off along the mist-draped trail, each step releasing the sweet scent of wet earth and new beginnings. Beside us, social workers led a group of rescued children, some clutching teddy bears, others skipping with cautious smiles. Volunteer handlers guided freed dogs, leashes slack, and tails tentative but hopeful. All around, families reunited after nightmares that had stretched across months of fear. A little girl named Amira tugged gently on my jacket, eyes wide. "Will my mommy come find me here?" she asked. Her voice trembled with hope and uncertainty. I knelt to her level. "Yes," I promised. "And she'll bring your puppy back too." At the word puppy, her face lit as if someone had lit a spark beneath her heart. She ran to the volunteer handler, who produced a small terrier with a pink ribbon tied around its neck. The dog barked softly, bounding into Amira's arms, and the two melted into each other in a hug that spoke of homecoming more than words ever could. Phoenix padded beside me, nose lifted, breathing in the renewed spirit of this place. Months ago, she led me into warehouses bathed in shadows. Now she guided me through a sanctuary of laughter and possibility. She nudged my hand and I looked down. In her eyes was a question. What comes after justice? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with an encrypted message. New tip. Midnight. Green Hollow Bridge. Solo. The sender's ID was blank. Another whistleblower. Perhaps someone moved to help when they saw the storms we braved. My pulse fluttered. The last 8 days had peeled back every layer of corruption. But if someone still whispered of a final hideout, I owed it to them, and to Phoenix, to follow. I checked the time. 6:45 a.m., too early to rush off, but I tucked the phone into my pocket, heart drumming a slow, steady beat. The day's itinerary lay before me, helping coordinate reunions, giving interviews to local news, ensuring every rescued child and dog had a safe placement. But the green light on that message demanded attention. I hadn't led Phoenix this far only to leave loose ends untied. I turned to Ruiz, who was orchestrating a lineup of foster families rendering paperwork. She glanced up, eyes clear beneath dusting of sweat. "I've got the reunification center running smoothly," she said, every syllable measured. "I'll handle this wing for the rest of the day. You need anything?" She paused as Phoenix bumped her shoulder with a kiss of fur. "Looks like she's reminding you of protocol." I chuckled, reaching down to scratch Phoenix's neck. "I have to chase one more shadow," I said. Ruiz nodded, offering a hand of solidarity. "Stay safe," she urged. "If this is real, we don't know what we'll find." But in her eyes shone trust. "Go," she said, "and bring it home." That evening, I parked at Green Hollow Bridge, where the river curved under an old steel span, festooned with twinkling lanterns for summer festivals past. The street lamps cast long reflections and the fog slithered in tongues across the pavement. Phoenix sat alert in the passenger seat, eyes bright pools of anticipation. I unbuckled her harness and clipped on her new Medal of Honor. It gleamed cold in the streetlight. "Last one," I murmured. "Let's see what you found." She sniffed the air, whiskers trembling, then sprang forward onto the bridge. I followed, heart tightening with every echo of her nails on metal grating. Halfway across, she stopped, nose down, paw raised, tail rigid. I crouched beside her, casting my light over rusted beams and weathered planks. Beneath us, city lights shimmered like distant stars in the dark current. But Phoenix's gaze was fixed on the far end of the bridge, where a steel grate door sat embedded in the walkway, once concealed by debris, now exposed by time and neglect. A chill rippled down my spine. I crouched by the latch and pulled. The mechanism groaned, then yielded. Below, a set of narrow stairs spiraled into pitch. A metallic tang hung in the air, oil, damp earth, and something more acrid, fear. I griped my flashlight and descended. Phoenix padded behind, tail high and steady. With every step, my mind replayed the first warehouse raid, the courtroom fireworks, the day we freed those cages. Now the final cavern awaited, one last underworld to illuminate. At the bottom, the passage opened into a bunker-like room lit by a single bare bulb dangling from wires. The walls dripped with condensation. Electricity hummed low. But more than that, the room reeked of recent habitation. Faint boot prints streaked mud at the entrance, and the dull clink of metal whispered behind a tarpaulin. I swept the light across the space. Steel tables, overturned crates, and, at the far wall, a large whiteboard scrawled with names and dates in black marker. My breath caught when I saw the heading, Operation Phoenix. Underneath were names I recognized, married couples who disappeared months ago, children never reported missing, dogs sold in backroom deals. The list was numbered, 27 names, kids and canines we hadn't yet found. I swallowed. The ring's reach had been deeper than we knew. Operation Phoenix was their plan to procure high-value victims for private buyers. An arcane cruelty they called a legacy sale. My fists clenched. Phoenix had borne their brand unwittingly, a twisted homage to the bird that rises, reborn from ashes. But here, they'd perverted that symbolism into a countdown of abduction. A soft whine rose behind me. Phoenix stood alert, hackles rising. She padded toward the crates. I followed, heart pounding. Under the tarp lay a laptop, its screen illuminated by its own meager battery. On the screen, a web interface filled with auction logs, password-protected pages listing starting bids for rare children and purebred dogs. I felt bile rise. Someone had planned to auction human lives like cattle. I knelt and fingered the keyboard. The username field read ADM-Phoenix-OP. Phoenix nudged my shoulder. Together we searched the logs, scrolling through bid histories, entries from IP addresses traced to embassies in multiple countries. Bidders using encrypted credentials. Someone or many people around the globe had placed outrageous sums on these names. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. I answered on speaker. "Reed," Ruiz's voice came through. "We've just gotten a hit on one of the Belize shell profiles. Coordinates for an airstrip east of town. They're moving shipments at dawn." My pulse raced. "I'm in a hidden auction vault," I said. "And there's a list, Operation Phoenix, 27 names. We have to move now." Ruiz's voice sharpened. "Get out of there. We'll swarm from above. Last I checked, customs can't get in without a warrant." I looked at Phoenix, head tilted as if sensing the urgency. I nodded. "We'll be careful." I grabbed the laptop like evidence and spun to climb the stairs. But then Phoenix hesitated, gaze fixed on a narrow door I'd passed on the far side of the room. My mind flickered. In every raid, she'd sniffed out hidden cells, revealed unmarked cages. If she's pointing here, there might be more victims, more proof. I crouched beside the door and pried it open. Inside was a low-ceilinged kennel, rows of small enclosures just big enough for a cowering child or a curled dog. In the corner sat a young girl, arms wrapped tight around her knees, tears tracking down dusty cheeks. Her eyes widened as Phoenix padded forward, nose soft on her boot. I knelt and offered my hand. "It's okay," I said, voice gentle. "You're safe." The girl hesitated, then placed her hand in mine. Nodding, she climbed out, rubbing her arm against her chest. Phoenix licked her hands in reassurance. I swept the rest of the kennels. 2 more children huddled in corners, and 1 frightened beagle shaking on the floor. My chest tightened at every whimper. Moments later, sirens echoed above. Flashlights pierced the hatch. I opened the stairs and guided the girl up as 2 customs officers and Ruiz arrived, weapons holstered but ready. They ushered the children and dog into Medic's arms on the dock above. I handed Ruiz the laptop. "The auctions," I said, voice taut. "We've got the entire list." She met my gaze. "We'll freeze every account. We'll issue international warrants for those buyers. This is the final nail in their coffin." She nodded toward the hatch. "Call in the K9 unit. They can help find any more hidden cells down there." I watched as Phoenix stepped onto the hatch cover, chest heaving, head held high. She had uncovered the heart of the conspiracy, the darkest secret of Operation Phoenix, and now it would be laid bare for the world to see. Ruiz placed a hand on my shoulder. This ends tonight. I exhaled, adrenalizing fear and relief mingling in my veins. I knelt and scratched Phoenix behind her ear. "Let's go home, girl," I whispered. She looked up, eyes shining with fierce pride. And with that single look, she reminded me of everything we had overcome and everything we had yet to do. Above, the customs convoy rolled onto the dock, lights flashing across the fog. The final chapter of this dark saga was unfolding under the steel bridge where our journey began. And at its end, children and dogs, 27 names we hadn't yet known, would finally walk into the dawn. I stood and slipped into the chilly night air, Phoenix at my side. Together we climbed onto the bridge and turned toward the city lights, ready to lead the way home. Two souls bound by loyalty and courage, walking into a future we had earned, one step at a time. The dawn light crept through slats in the warehouse's corrugated walls as I crouched beside Phoenix, each breath forming mist in the cool air. We'd emerged from the hidden bunker moments ago, carrying evidence that would shatter Operation Phoenix. And now the underworld ripples were all around us. Ship horns blared from the docks. Sirens wailed in the distance. A low thunder rolled in the storm clouds overhead. Tonight, the final act would play out. Behind us, customs agents and local police secured the hatch, calling out names and tallying rescued souls. 27 children and dogs, once numbered in a twisted ledger, now stumbled into blankets and arms that welcomed them with tearful embraces. A medic led a trembling boy toward a waiting van. A volunteer called softly to a collie whose ribs still protruded. The siblings from that first warehouse reunion helped each other into the daylight, eyes round with relief. I rose to my feet, Phoenix at my side, her fur damp from the damp concrete but her stance unbowed. My coat was streaked with mud, my gloves slick with the grit of every raid, but inside I felt an ember of fierce triumph. We had fought walls of corruption, crossed oceans of lies, and followed a dog's instincts through the darkest depths. Now the final chokehold, Marianne Cross's secret auction platform, was in the hands of the authorities. Detective Ruiz jogged up beside me, phone pressed to her ear. She hung up and flashed a weary grin. "The feds have issued arrest warrants. Interpol's on the case. Panama, Belize, Switzerland, anywhere someone tried to buy a life, they'll find a name waiting." Her eyes glinted. "Even better, Cross's PAC accounts were frozen last night, and 3 senators have resigned in disgrace." She exhaled, shoulders slumping. "It's over." I leaned down and scratched Phoenix behind the ears. She leaned into my palm, tail thumping once. A single drumbeat of victory. "You did this," I whispered. "We did this." A sudden crack of thunder rolled across the river, the sky splitting as raindrops began to patter against the concrete floor. Lightning arced through the squat windows, illuminating groups of officers loading crates of evidence onto trucks. The rain's rhythm quickened, as though nature itself celebrated the fall of this hidden empire. "Read," came a voice, Agent Webb wiping rain from his hazel eyes. He approached with a laptop case and a sealed envelope. "We've received the final bid records from the auction server. All logs, full correspondence, IP addresses, encrypted payment processors, the entire chain of command." He handed me the case and envelope. Nothing left to hide. My heart thundered. The envelope bore the crest of the U.S. Attorney's Office, ensuring chain of custody. I unsealed it and withdrew thick printouts. Names of bidders, dates of bids, final prices, wire transfer receipts. Every detail we needed to convict the top brass, buyers, middlemen, handlers, every person who trafficked in betrayal, now exposed. I turned the pages, my breath catching at the sheer scope. CEOs, diplomats, entertainment magnates, hundreds of affluent figures who had gambled with human lives and canine souls. Now their names would go public, their reputations in ashes. I looked at Phoenix, shining under the warehouse lights. "This will change everything," I said softly. "They'll know mercy has teeth and that the voiceless can bite back." Thunder rumbled again, and the storm poured harder, water streaming through broken panels to form rivulets that coursed across the floor like small rivers. Officers moved equipment under tarps, medics guided children toward buses. Yet in that chaos, the world felt cleaner, rinsed by rain, baptized in justice. Detective Ruiz placed a hand on my shoulder. Once these prints are entered into evidence, Cross and her associates are done. The courthouse will be flooded with cases for years, but for now, we need to get you and your partner to dry land. I inhaled, tasting the salt of the river mixed with rain. She needs rest, I said. We've got her vet waiting. Temporary shelter for everyone. I patted Phoenix's flank. And we've earned it. Ruiz nodded. As we walked toward the exit, Phoenix pressed close, head low against my leg. I opened the door and we stepped into the deluge. Rain plastered my hair to my forehead. Cold droplets stung my face. The world outside was a curtain of gray, but I felt an ember of warmth blazing inside me. A van waited at the curb, windows fogged with breath and rain. Medics loaded children and dogs inside, each face turning to wave as they passed. The last child, a little boy with a crooked smile, clutched Phoenix's leash, dangling the metal on her harness. He leaned forward and kissed her cheek. "Thank you," he whispered. Phoenix licked his hand in return. I lifted the metal and tucked it inside my pocket for safekeeping. Then I opened the van door and helped the boy inside, guided the dogs onto plush mats, and gave the final hugs. One by one, they disappeared into the warmth of the van until only Phoenix and I remained on the curb, dripping wet. I closed the door, then turned to Phoenix. She gazed up at me, eyes soft. In her gaze, I saw memories of the storm drain, the first warehouse, courtroom applause, every moment that had led us here. I knelt and pressed my forehead to her muzzle. "We're going home," I whispered. She wagged her tail once, deliberately as if marking the moment. We walked to my car, each step a promise that this night's storm had cleansed more than concrete. It had loosed the bonds of fear, broken cages of cruelty, and propelled us into a future where the voiceless would always have a champion. Inside the car, I brushed water from Phoenix's ears, settled her blankets on the seat behind me, and climbed in. As I started the engine, the windshield wipers carved arcs through the rain, revealing the city skyline glittering in the distance, signs of life pulsating with possibility. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the final printout from Webb, tracing the names of those who would stand trial. Then I dialed Detective Ruiz. "It's done," I said. "The operation's wrapped. We've got every name, every face." She smiled, relief mingling with pride. "Then we wait for justice, and after that, we heal." I nodded, eyes on the road as the first tendrils of sunlight pierced the storm clouds. "We'll heal," I promised. "Together." Phoenix lay her head on the seat, muzzle resting on her paws, eyes closing in contentment. The storm had raged, secrets had bled, but now came the calm, gentle, real, full of new beginnings. As the city's edge gave way to quiet streets, I felt a shift inside me. The scars of battle, physical and emotional, would fade with time, replaced by the courage born of loyalty and the belief that one dog's instincts could topple empires of cruelty. We drove toward home, the sunrise gilding the horizon, the mist lifting off the river, and the promise of every tomorrow shining brighter than any storm. Because even in the darkest night, hope can guide us to the light. And with Phoenix by my side, I knew no darkness would ever last. If you believe in fighting for the voiceless and following the sparks of loyalty wherever they lead, hit subscribe, like, and share this video. Our journey may end here, but the fight for justice never stops. Thank you for standing with us. If this story moved you even a little, don't forget to like, share, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want more powerful emotional stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. There's so much more to come.